Welcome back to the Sports Beat KC podcast. This is Jesse Newell, KU beat reporter for the Kansas City Star. I'm joined once again this week by CJ Moore. CJ, how you doing this week?
Jesse, doing well. How you doing, man?
I hear we're on a time crunch here. We have to finish this podcast before your son wakes up from his nap. Is that true?
Oh man, we got this. He takes I'm guessing 1:45 2-hour nap. So if we're still talking in 2 hours, I think we've got problems.
Yeah, we definitely would have problems, and my computer might shut down by then, or people would all tune out by then. So yeah, we'll keep this one to half hour to 45 minutes like we normally do. But a lot to talk about since we last talked a couple weeks ago. The biggest news for KU basketball in the last couple weeks has been Svi Mykhailiuk and his return to the team, and now that basically sets up KU's 13 scholarships for next season and sets up KU's rotation for next season. So let's start with this, CJ. Are you surprised by Svi Mykhailiuk's decision to return to Kansas?
No, I'm not surprised. I kind of felt like it could go either way. I think if he would have been confident that he was going to get drafted in the first round or maybe early second or maybe even just get drafted at all, I think he might have stayed in the draft. But I think he probably got the kind of feedback that he needed to address some things and show some things in his game to really, have a good shot at either getting in the first round or getting a guaranteed contract. So I think it was a smart decision for him to return.
What's crazy to me is I look at what he's done, and you kind of forget about these things. You're around these players so much, and you think about what I guess you think of them as the last impression they've made on you or what they've done recently. But looking back at Draft Express and Svi Mykhailiuk and what he's done on there. At one point, I think I'd have to look this back up, but I think he was 8th in one mock draft when he first decided to come to Kansas. So it is kind of crazy to track what people have thought of Svi Mykhailiuk, because again, from all indications, from all those interviews that we saw out there, he was ready to go if he was even going to be a second-round pick. But with the ankle injury, the shortened wingspan, not being able to perform in the combine, it seemed like that wasn't even a guarantee. So the decision to come back may not have been totally his decision, but maybe more a decision of, hey, my stock is really low right now. I got to come back and try to get that back up again.
Yeah, you're seeing more and more guys come from overseas and play college basketball in the United States. And in his situation, it maybe ended up hurting him. I think there might have been more intrigue if he just would have stayed in Ukraine and kind of stayed on the path he was on. He's always done pretty well in international competition. He's probably hurt himself a little bit by coming to Kansas. Not necessarily hurt his game, but hurt just the perception of what he is. But at the same time, I don't think it's necessarily stunted his growth. He's gotten some of the best coaching you can get at this level. So I think it's a good decision for him to come back, and hopefully by the time he does enter the draft, he will be more prepared to play at the pro level than he would have been if he wouldn't have come to Kansas.
Yeah, again, it's just kind of a fascinating thing because the reason he came to the States was to be an NBA player. And like you said, unfortunately for him, if you're looking at this kind of from a big picture perspective, it just hasn't worked out. I mean, coming to Kansas and doing what he wanted to do, it hasn't worked out the way he envisioned, because if it had, he would have been gone by now, or he would have been considered an NBA draft prospect after this season. It hasn't happened. It doesn't mean the story can't turn out well for Svi Mykhailiuk, but it just kind of is a shame, because I believe his vision all along was to come to Kansas, stay a couple of years, and then go pro, be an NBA player. He was hoping that the exposure at KU would help him do that, and it just hasn't turned out. Let's flip, though, the perspective to Kansas and how it changes for them. Now, again, KU has all its scholarship spots taken. The roster going into next season. How do you see Svi fitting into this roster next year, and what do you do for KU's roster construction coming up in 2017, 2018?
I mean, obviously, Svizus is going to win National Player of the Year, right?
Yeah, I knew you were going to say something.
I went back, and now that Svizus has returned, and I looked to see what school has any school had a different guy win National Player of the Year in back-to-back seasons, and Duke did do it 01, 02 with Jay Williams or Shin Battier and Jay Williams. So, I think maybe we're looking at something like that, where Svi is obviously the best player in college basketball and will finally dominate like we know he's capable of doing.
I'm not even going to give you a response to that.
No, yeah, I think Jesus is a solid piece that will help. And I believe I think I read you had a blog. I'm not sure if it was last week or the week before, where you talked about who are going to be the shot creators for this team, and will they be able to get easy 3-point looks? Am I correct in that? Did I dream this? Did I just dream Jesse wrote some 3-point blog, or
No, no, you
that
got it
actually
right.
happened, right?
That happened earlier this week. That was the
Hey,
blog up on the
look,
site. Good job. I appreciate you
look,
being a loyal reader. Yeah.
yeah, I read something you wrote. So I think that he helps in that regard because he is a guy that maybe we haven't seen a ton of it at KU, but I think that's in his repertoire. And you might see him get a handle a little bit more, be a little bit more of a creator than he was in the offense this past year, where he was more of just kind of a spot up guy. So I think he could maybe help there because, I think Graham's going to be a really, really good setup guy, but Malik Newman's more of kind of a chucker. And I don't know that you have, other guys on the roster that really are great passers. And so I think Svi helps in that regard, that the ball movement will be better because Svi's on the floor, because he's always been a pretty good ball mover, pretty good passer. And, Vic is not, Lajoa Vic's somebody that struggles in that regard. So I think getting Svi back, that's one of the areas where he really helps.
I think you might be right too. I might be a little bit unfair to Svi because I post his assist rate and talk about how he hasn't been a great assist guy so far. He's been a good passer in some certain pick and roll situations when he's been asked to do that, but he really hasn't been asked to do it very often. Like you said, he's been more of a wing who's been asked to kind of go to the corner and shoot. So it might be more of a matter of opportunity for him to create for others rather than him not being able to do it. But again, until he is able to prove it, you kind of have to assume that's going to be an adjustment period for him if he's even going to be asked to do it again. Because, again, if you're penciling in Devontae Graham at the 1, Malik Newman at the 2, well, that puts Svi Mykhailiuk at the 3 again, and you're kind of asking him to do the same thing he's done in his previous 3 years at Kansas, which is stand in the corner and shoot.
Not necessarily, though, because, this roster is a lot different. It's roles are going to evolve because, think how much Frank Mason and Josh Jackson dominated the ball. Every single game, first possession, going to Josh Jackson on that, handoff play. Like that was a given every game, first play. Frank Mason was the National Player of the Year, dominated the ball quite a bit for a KU guard to have the ball as much as he did. So the offense is going to evolve. It's going to look a lot different. So I think that you can't just look at these players and expect them to basically be what they've been in the past. I think some roles are going to change. And I think while I don't know if Svi's will be a ton different, I can see it happening. I do think Devontae Graham's role is going to be a little bit different than he's had in the past, just being a little bit more of a facilitator than he has been in the past.
Well, which is crazy because the talk we always hear about with Devontae Graham is, hey, this is the year he kind of gets to step into the offensive role. Here's the year where he kind of doesn't have to defer to everybody else. And that was one of the points I made in the article, is like, this might be the year where he most has to defer just because you have all these shooters that need to be set up, and Devontae Graham has been decent at setting up shooters in the past and might have to do it even more. Let me get your thoughts on the blog too real quick, CJ, because I've had people come both sides of it, say, hey, I could see that being a concern. I can see where that might hurt Kansas, and then I've seen people come to me and say, hey, look, you're making a mountain out of a molehill here. This is not going to be a big a problem as you're talking about. What do you think? Is the loss of Mason and Jackson going to completely reshape this roster, and could it be a detriment to this Kansas team? I know it could be, but like, how much of a detriment do you think it could be that they don't have that normal penetrating guy that's able to get by the defense and score at the rim, which kind of changes up how you defend Kansas?
I think back to the roster after the year they made the championships game. So that'd be 2013, right?
Absolutely.
So Elijah Johnson's the point guard. Ben McLemore's your 2. He couldn't set up anybody. Travis Relaford's your 3-man, not really a assist type guy. That offense ranked 27th in adjusted efficiency, and I think Devontae Graham's a much better facilitator and handler than Elijah Johnson. So, you probably had more experience on that roster, but a little bit similar makeup, I guess you could say, as what kind of we're looking at right now. I think if there's any team that was most similar built to what the 2017-18 Jayhawks look like, it might be that one. And that team still was 27th in adjusted offensive efficiency. That's really low for a Bill Self team. But while I'm making this point, I do think the big difference here when you look at those rosters is I think Graham is a much better point guard and much more will be much more comfortable in that role than Elijah Johnson was. But at the same time, it's kind of a similar thing where Elijah Johnson was always that secondary ball handler and he had to go to become the primary guy. Devontae's had the same thing. He's always been the secondary to Frank. Now he's going to be the primary, but I think he's much more equipped to do it than Elijah was.
Yeah, I think that's a really good comparison. I kept thinking about that team when I was writing this as well, and the thing we've talked about with Frank Mason and Devontae Graham being different, Frank Mason could drive to score. He could get his shoulders by people and score at the rim. Devontae Graham more driving for a pull-up shot, and so that might not strike as much fear in those guys. But again, that kind of reminds you a little bit more of Elijah Johnson. Elijah Johnson wasn't a guy who got his shoulders by guys, got to the rim, got fouled, that sort of thing. He was more, hey, I'll drive to get an assist or drive to get a pull-up. And so I do see similarities to that 2013 team. And while you're mentioning that, the thing I'm going to bring up right now, CJ. What am I going to say right now?
Their 3-point percentage, just about middle of the pack for Bill Self teams, maybe a little on the lower end.
And not even 3-point percentage, 3-point rate, which is the amount of threes you take. So 29% of their shots that year were threes. That was 281st nationally. And so this is exactly the point.
But that's about in line with Bill Self teams in that era.
It is, but it's not in line with the.
You look the year before, they were 29-6, and they had a shot creator in Tyshawn. So it really wasn't that much different.
You said 296 the year before, is that what you said?
29.6, yeah.
Oh, 29.6, gotcha. Well, yeah. Well, let me say this, though. I mean, again, you were talking about the pieces of that team had. Okay, you've got Ben McLemore, great three-point shooter. You've got Travis Relaford, great three-point shooter. And again, those guys, one of them, McLemore makes 42% of his threes. Relaford makes 42% of his threes. But again, that's not a team that shot a bunch of threes or shot maybe enough threes. And so you're kind of getting back to the original point of the blog, which is, hey, KU has got lined up these shooters. I mean, these guys are going to need shots. Malik Newman's going to need shots. Devontae Graham's going to need threes. Sue Mikhailuk is going to need threes. Sam Cunliffe is probably going to need threes. LaGerald Vick, was 38% last year. So all these guys, for an effective, efficient offense, for something better than 27th, which was KU's worst mark since, I believe, 2006, 2007, if you're looking at Bill Self team, so one of the worst in the last decade. The big difference is they shot more threes, and they have the pieces to shoot threes this year, but that year they weren't able to do it because, again, they didn't have the facilitators maybe of previous years. So, again, it could be something, it could be nothing, but at this point I think that is kind of the worst-case scenario because if you remember the 2013 team, CJ, the reason that team won was Jeff Withey was in the back and blocking every shot that was coming toward them. So they had a success.
Amazing.
Yeah, he was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing defensive player, an elite defensive team. I don't think you can project this Kansas team as that, but I think they're going to need a little bit more help from their offense. If you want more help from your offense, this team is going to have to shoot more threes, and so we'll see how that all shakes out. It'll be an interesting thing to track over the course of the season. Let's go ahead and get to some Twitter questions. We asked for Twitter topics on there, and like normal, people did not disappoint. I'm going to get Andy Mitt's question right out of the way first off because this is the easiest answer of all. I just really want to know which one of you would win a pickup game one-on-one. I already responded, CJ. I put CJ not close. So ones and twos to 21, me versus you. What's the score?
I mean, I think we've been through this before. Ones and twos to 21. It's like 21-3.
We might have to make this happen, CJ, because if we put the over under at 3, then I think I might just start chucking twos until I make 2 of them. So if I go,
bring it. Your 3-point rate can be 90%. That's fine.
Can I go 2 for 17 against you? I mean, come on, that's all I need to do.
I don't know that you can.
Okay. All right. Well,
can you go 4 to 17 against nobody?
Okay, we're gonna have to make this happen now. Now, those are fighting words. We're gonna have to make this happen at some point. The over/under on 21 is 3. Everybody remember that, and I'm gonna take it to CJ. Maybe we'll get some video evidence as well. Bobby Norrell, a loyal listener, Bobby Norrell says, "Does Frank Mason get drafted? If so, where? If Yogi Ferrell can find a spot in the NBA, Mason definitely can." So, what's your feel right now, CJ? Do you think Frank Mason is going to be drafted?
Yeah, I think he gets drafted. I think guys like Yogi Ferrell, Fred VanVleet, the success they had has helped him. So I think he gets drafted. I think he makes it in the NBA. Now you do have to take into account when it's not necessarily fair to just be like, oh well, Yogi Ferrell made it. Frank Mason will. Yogi Ferrell, it took till at first he played for Brooklyn, got picked up by Brooklyn, didn't do really much there. Then he got picked up by Dallas and had a lot of success there. A lot of times it's a situation. And Dallas, it's funny. I did a scouting report on him last year for Bleacher Report, and one of the teams and guys I talked about, like of Yogi having a chance, was Dallas. And I'm trying to think who's the little guard Dallas has had forever. He went to Northeastern. He's a foreign guy. Spacing right now.
Don't worry, I'm twittering it.
You're twittering it.
I'm googling it. JJ Barea.
Yeah, JJ Barea. There you go. I said Yogi Ferrell maybe kind of turned into a JJ Barea type, but JJ had a great fit in playing for Dallas, who was a franchise kind of willing to have different types of guys, not necessarily kind of thinking outside the box. And what do you know? He ends up at Dallas and having success kind of in a similar role. So, I don't know what the perfect fit is in terms of what team, maybe for Frank, but if he finds himself in a good situation and a team where there's going to be minutes to be had, I think he's going to figure it out, and I think he's going to find his way to staying into the league.
Yeah, he consistently is moving up draft boards, which is important for him. Draft Express, latest one, has him going 48th in the Milwaukee Bucks. And again, people can say, "Oh, you'd rather pick your team late in the draft," and that's worked out for some guys like Tark Black. But there is some teams associate more value to the guys that they draft because there's more fanfare there, and you don't want to be proven wrong, so you might get an extra chance or two if you are drafted by a team. So Frank Mason moving up to that point, and it just means he'll probably get an extra look or two before a team gives up on him, and that's something that you would definitely like if you're in his position. So everything seems to be trending up for him. So he seems like I've been saying all through December, January, February that he wouldn't get drafted but would get a chance from a team, and it seems like he's definitely risen his stock since then.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's going to get drafted. I think he's going to make it. So I'm betting on Frank, and he had a good combine, and looked good in the scrimmages. Although you can only take so much out of that, but to have the productive season he had at Kansas, to do that on that level, that got people's attention. And height is a factor, but it's like I said, the guys who have had success recently, and the way the NBA is, where it's so much about spacing and having guys that can create rotations and having guys that can do things off the dribble. That's so valuable in today's NBA. And Frank Mason, that's the one thing he does better than just about anybody in college basketball. So I think he's going to have a shot.
From Boise, Samurai Jayhawk, nice guy. I met him in Tulsa when KU was playing down there. Is Preston Azubuike, Lightfoot, Whitman a sufficient four-man rotation to sustain Self's preferred high-low system, or will Svi/Sam Cunliffe see the four? What are your thoughts?
I think that'll be one of the most interesting things to watch over the first month of KU season, and maybe on their trip overseas this year too. I do think that we've talked about it. I think they're going to go back to more of traditional lineups this year, yep. And you're going to see more high-low. But a big factor in all of this is how ready is Billy Preston, and what kind of player is he going to be? If he's a guy that turns out to be the 5-star talent that he is and plays like it, then I think you'll see KU going traditional. If for some reason, and I'm not saying he's going to be a disappointment, but for some reason he's, last year at this time we thought Carlton Bragg was going to be a big time player for Kansas, and he didn't end up being that. So if it's a situation where the kid comes out and kind of struggles like Bragg did, I could see KU kind of going to the small lineup, not maybe exclusively, but a decent amount of it, because they just have so many wings, and there's only so much playing time, and they got a lot of talent at that more talent at that position than any other position. So Self's obviously figured out from last year a way to get those guys on the floor is to play small. And while there's defensive limitations there, I still think, if those are the best players that you can put on the floor, they'll figure out a way to do it in a way. So I'm not sure I really answered the question, but I think you could see a little bit of both again.
Yeah, it's who would be your preferred small ball four? We've talked about this previously. For Boyce, anybody else out there, if you go back to the previous podcast on your iPhone or Android or whatever device you're listening to this, we talked a little bit of small ball and kind of who it would be. I've talked about LeGerald Vick being the most likely guy, just because he might give up some ground, but he has some athleticism to recover. Other Big 12 schools have to do this same thing, just because it's hard to compete. And get those top-notch big guys that KU seems to get every single year, even though it's been a little bit tougher in the last couple years. But Boyce mentions Svi Mikhailuk and Sam Cunliffe. Do you see those guys as more likely than a Vic, or I guess who do you think is the most likely fit at a small ball for?
I'll have to see more Sam Cunliffe. I just haven't seen enough of him to really know, how he'll fit. But I'm with you. I think Vic is the most natural fit there. I mean, there's some games where maybe you're playing a team with a terrible four, and you can put whoever on him. You can just hide somebody on him. So in a way, it's kind of positionless basketball when they go to that lineup, I think, and you just match up with whoever matchups best.
All right, let's go to Dylan, our good friend Dylan on here. Dylan Delissi says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how big is Svi's decision enough to move KU from number 9 to number 2? And just for those folks out there, he's referencing Myron Metcalf's way too early ESPN.com rankings, where KU moved from 9 to 2 after Svi's decision, now number 2 in the preseason poll. So what do you think? How big of a deal is the Svi decision?
Well, Myron likes to eat a lot of popcorn, and I think so he got a bad batch or something that's screwing with his head, because I don't know what. I mean, I'll say this. When I started, this is the first year where I didn't do right as soon as the buzzer sounds the top 25 for the next year. But I was happy I didn't have that assignment this year, because I was trying to think, okay, who would I put number 1? And it was really, really hard to come up with who it would be. And, I was kind of thinking maybe Villanova, and I'm not sure. I think some of those rankings, people have Nova just barely in the top 10. So I think it's a really, really tough year. I'll say that. I think it's a really tough year. I'm not sure. I think Kansas 9 is probably too low, just betting on Bill Self's track record, betting on the talent. I think 9 is too low. I don't know how Svi necessarily changes you from 9 to 10 to 2, although I'm the biggest Svi's believer out there, but I don't think he changes Kansas that much, although I do think he helps. Maybe he's worth a spot or two. So their preseason rankings, they're just for talk, so it's not that big a deal. But I do think in terms of what Svi makes Kansas, you could see KU maybe being a 1 seed as opposed to a 2 seed because of Svi. I think he might be a difference of a seed line, but I think they would be a similar team whether he had left or not.
Yeah, if I've taught you anything on this podcast, CJ, this is the place for shameless plugs. So right after Svi made his decision, I did write a blog about what his return meant to Kansas, and almost the exact same lines as you. Look, you have to view it as a positive for Kansas. It's not a bad thing when you have a fourth-year returning player come back and a guy who has a professional future, whether it's in the NBA or elsewhere. However, having said that, it was a position where KU didn't have a huge need. So how much better is Svi Mikhailuk than the additional minutes, him taking the minutes from a combination of LeGerald Vick, Sam Cunliffe, and then Marcus Garrett, who's a top 40 recruit? What's the replacement level there? KU was probably going to get pretty good minutes from whatever guy was going to fill in that spot anyway. So again, it's an overall positive for Kansas, but I don't want to overstate what it means, because they had pretty good options there already. So Svi coming back is good, but how good? It's okay. You know what I mean? It's probably better than anything Bill Self could have pulled this late in recruiting. Who knows? Because that staff has been so good at pulling late guys in recruiting. Maybe they could have pulled something out of their hat. But you're happy for the kid. You're happy for him coming back. You're happy for the story and that him being able to maybe rise his stock. But I don't think that this sways KU's chances or rankings or whatever that much. Like you said, maybe from a 2 seed to a 1 seed. That's the kind of range I would be looking at. So I definitely agree with you right there. Real quick from Dynamite Hawk 1 on Twitter, and one of the live blog followers, we appreciate that, on KC Star. He says, if you name your first child Dynamite, I will get a pet fish and name him or her Jessie this weekend. So that seems like a fair trade to me. Gosh darn it, CJ, the only problem is
You already had a kid.
I've already had a kid, and you've already had a
Catch
kid.
up, Dynamite.
Yeah, so Dynamite's way behind in this. So that would have happened immediately. My wife would have gone for it. I mean, Dynamite would have been the name of our first daughter or son. But since this came so late, it's just not going to happen. So unfortunately, there's not going to be a Jesse Goldfish out there. So sorry to disappoint you, Dynamite, but you just were a little bit too late to the draw.
Yeah, and for anyone who has the same offer for me, I'm done. Cut, the Moors are done. So no more kids coming this way. So no Dynamites. While that's a fabulous name, there will be no Dynamite more in the future. Dynamite. Although Dynamite Newell really has a touch. I mean, you guys are going to have more kids. You're not just going to settle on the one, are you? You're not going to be one done.
Done.
One and done.
One and done. Even if it's leaving the NBA, it's in this household for sure.
I can respect that. One and done. All right.
Listen, I will tell you, Dynamite Moore has a ring to it. I'm not going to lie to you. Look, the best name I've covered anytime, and I'll always say this, at the Cap Journal, I covered a preps girl who ran track and played basketball. Her name was Jazz Sweet. Awesome name. Jazz nice. Sweet. I mean, I think she's playing in college somewhere now, but I will always remember that name because that is an awesome name. Whoever her mom is, congratulations. That is the best name I've covered. What do you think the best name that you've covered is, CJ?
Best name I've covered. Man, you put me on the spot here.
Listen. It would be Dynamite Moore if you had that kid and he was good at sports. I guarantee you that would be the best name.
Maybe so. We call my son Henry. We call him the Hammer. So the Hammer Moore. I don't know, not really a Hammer Moore, but we call him the Hammer. So someday out there, I'll be shouting, "Come on, Hammer!" That could be fun.
Yeah, wow, and he'd probably go by that too. Definitely. If in the starting lineups, that might have a little bit more intimidating ring to it, whether he plays basketball or baseball or whatever the case might be. From Joe on here, he says, "What are some tactics, if any, that Self can implore to his guys that help them play looser in pivotal games such as the Elite Eight?" And it's the $1 million question, CJ. I mean, I think Bill Self deals with this question a lot in his own mind.
Keeps him up at night.
Yeah, I mean, just even forget everyone else, forget the outside pressure, forget us talking about it in the off season. Don't you think this is a question that he grapples with a lot? Maybe even every week, maybe even every single day.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that he thinks about it. I don't know that he would think about it that much. I mean, maybe when you get there, you start to think about it. I think maybe they just need to quit talking about it.
Yeah.
And just go out there and play and not say anything about it, or just be like, hey, when you get to this type of, when you, this is the answer you get, at that time. When you get to this stage, of course there's pressure and there's stakes. There's pressure for everybody. We embrace that. We want pressure. That's why kids come to Kansas. They want pressure. So we're going to go out there and we're going to, deal with it, and we're going to compete, and we want pressure. So let's go have some fun. I don't know, something like that. Try to get that mentality through to your kids. It's hard. I mean, it's kind of become a thing just because they've played that way in some of those Elite Eight games. But I don't necessarily think that's what happened this past year with Oregon. I just think you caught Oregon on a night where they were really, really, really good, had a really, really good game plan, and had this dude named Jordan Bell who basically eliminated everything you wanted to do.
Yeah, it's just difficult at Kansas because Final Four is the standard, and that's always going to be the thing. It's funny, I was going through some I did a ranking blog today, ranking some stuff, and I was going back through the KC Star archives, and I typed in Roy Williams to the photo archive, and sure enough, there was a photo that popped up with him and Stankham.
Stankham, I had that shirt.
This Stankham, the old monkey that got the gorilla off KU's back. But I agree with you.
Was that 01?
It was the Mississippi River. So 01, 02, right? Is that? Am I saying that
right?
It
was 01. I think it was the year before they got to the Final Four, wasn't it?
Well, we can do you can do a quick Google search as I continue talking, or I can do a quick Google search as well. But it is interesting because this has kind of become Bill Self-Stankham. You know what I mean? This Elite Eight, whatever you want to call it. And I've talked before about. Oh, you're right. Yeah, March 21st, 2001. It's the KU stuffed monkey Stankham. So, wait. No, 20. 2001. I'm sorry.
It was getting out of the second round.
Getting out of the second round. That's right. So this has kind of become Bill Self-Stankham, if you will. But again, I think from questions, I remember Vahe Gregorian, my colleague here at the Kansas City Star, asked him the question: at this Elite Eight and said, "Hey, what is it going to take to get over it?" And I mean, Bill Self embraces that. He knows what's out there. He understands that this is a tough round. He fully says that it's the toughest round for his team. But one other thing that might help Kansas, and it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen in the near future because of all the success that they have. Remember, I think about the best game that KU's played in the Elite Eight, and that was against North Carolina. And KU was the 2 seed, and North Carolina was the 1 seed. And all the focus was on Roy Williams facing his old team, and all the pressure was on Carolina to make it to the Final Four, all those sorts of things. And KU played loose and played fine and didn't really seem to be tight.
But what's funny is they kind of played tight in like that whole tournament until that point.
Absolutely. Yes, they did. And I agree with you because up until that point, it was like get the pressure to get there. But that's what I'm saying is like you almost just need an Elite Eight game where you're not the team being looked at, when you're not the team that's the favorite. And again, Bill Self, that's really difficult because they are going to be the favorite to get to the Final Four almost every single year in that Elite Eight game that they play in if they make it that far. So it's a difficult thing. But like I said, I don't think it's from a lack of trying. I think he's adjusted his ways. I think he's become more loose in the locker room before games. I think he's thought about this. I think he's tried different things. It just hasn't worked out. And again, all of this could be a very small sample size thing. You only get one chance at the Elite Eight every year or every other year, every third year. And it just hasn't worked out for Kansas, but I don't think it's for a lack of trying. I guess I'll go ahead and say that. Let's wrap up with this one from William Hanna. What rule or rule changes would you like to see in college basketball and why? Love this question. CJ, what rule changes in college basketball?
6 fouls.
Okay.
I think players should get 6 fouls. I think you would at least get to see more guys play with 2 in the first half. I think it's stupid when you pull a guy just because he has 2 fouls and you don't play him the rest of the half. I mean, baskets count just as much in the first half as they do in the second half, and a lot of times, I guess sometimes it's situational. I mean, you got to look at the player, but I don't think every coach should have a hard, fast rule where, hey, if a guy has 2 fouls, I'm sitting him. And I think Self's adjusted to that the last few years. I think
Absolutely.
He's played guys more with 2 than he would have in the past. So I would like six fouls just because, you'd see the good players not fouling out as much, and that foul trouble not being as much of a factor, which I think sucks. And it sucks when you take the best players out of the game. So I would change it to 6 fouls. I would, let's see here. I like the international rule where after an offensive rebound, you only have like 14 seconds or whatever, shortened shot clock. That's kind of cool.
Okay.
I would embrace that.
I'm getting the impression here, CJ, that you don't see a lot that needs fixing with college basketball. Is that?
You get that impression because I told you that before the podcast. Spoiler alert. But I don't see a lot wrong with college basketball. I don't know how you necessarily. All right, I will say this. There's a reason that nationally you're going to see less national writers on the college basketball level soon. There is a problem in the sport just doesn't have the traction for as long as maybe college football does. It's a lot of outlets and a lot of people view it as a 1-month sport, and that's sucks and it's a tragedy, I think. But so maybe somehow you make the regular season more meaningful, but I don't necessarily know how you do that. I just think it's I don't know that there's a way to fix that. The best thing is you keep the pros in the game longer, like the one and done rule. Maybe if the NBA would change it to a 2 and done rule, that would help college basketball. That would help maybe get a few more viewers in. But as far as the product that's on the court, I think it's a pretty darn good product, and I don't really know how you make it that much better. The biggest thing for me is I've always thought you could improve the officiating by making them like employees, having a NCAA officiating pool and having the NCAA in charge of it, and not having all these basically independent contractors working these games and working so many games. Have more control as far as the officials goes. You probably get better officiating that way. But other than that, the rules, I think we're in a pretty good place right now.
Oh, well,
but Jesse, I know you got a list. Let's hear it.
Let's start.
Jesse's
with
got like 4-point plays.
Let's start with this. 6 fouls, not going to work. because you're just going to encourage more fouling, which is going to encourage more free throws, which is going to make the game worse than it already is right now. Which I'm not saying horrible, but again, you don't want more fouls, so you don't want to encourage more fouls. It's also going to make it tougher for people to score inside, which is a bad thing for the game. I agree with you that you want to take the officiating out of it more than college basketball is right now, which is a big problem, but I don't think that's the way to do it. My number one thing, and I know everybody's going to call me crazy for this, and everyone always has, but I would go to an untimed ending of games. See, to me, if you're going to be college basketball, be different than the NBA. I mean, it obviously is not as good a product as the NBA, and people that love basketball are going to watch the NBA, but make it different.
The tournament trying that this summer, I think?
Yes, the tournament is trying that summer. Do this untimed ending. So basically, you play the first 36 minutes. At the end of that, you have your media timeout, and then what happens is you add 7 points to the team that's leading total. And then when they get to that point, whoever gets to that point total first wins. So let's say you're up 62-53. The target score is 69. First team to 69 wins. And that way you don't have fouls at the end. You don't have everything muddied up at the end. You take officiating almost completely out of it when all these teams are hacking and it's just bad basketball. It's an eyesore. You take all that out of it.
I don't hate that.
Listen,
it sounds like too jock jams-ish to me or something, you know.
But
what was the NBA? Was it Jock Jams? Is that right? The
NBA
MTV.
Jam.
Huh?
NBA Jam video game?
No, the MTV where they had 4-point plays and.
Well, no, listen.
The jock jams, is that right?
If this,
I don't know. It sounds like it sounds too gimmicky at first when you first say it, but when you really think about it, I do like where you're going there. I like your reasoning for it. I don't know if that's the way to do it, but I like where your reasoning's coming from.
Here's the negative involved: less time for Bill Self. Bill Self's son Tyler.
Take away buzzer beaters
and walk-ons. Yeah, so you don't see the walk-ons. There will be no overtimes, but every game would have a game winner, and that is not something that happens right now. So I think that's also something that could energize the game, get it going. I mean, again, if you're going to take officiating out of it, another number two thing that you do is you either go to quarters, which everyone else does, including women's basketball, or you go to, hey, you reset the fouls at the 10-minute mark. The 1-and-1 is what kills the college game. I mean, when teams get 6 fouls in the first 5 minutes of the half and you're just shooting free throws from then on, it creates this crazy home court advantage and it also slows down the game, all those sorts of things. Take officiating out of it by doing that. The three-point line's got to move back at some point, but I guess if people are fine with it now, it kind of adds some variance to the game. And then, as you were talking about earlier, how can you make college basketball more than a 1-month sport? Everyone's going to hate me for this. Everyone's going to hate me because their office pool will be going away. Shorten up the tournament bracket. Start with 8 teams. Start with 4 teams. Start with 16 teams. You don't need 68 freaking teams in this tournament. Reward teams for a good regular season. That means the regular season means something. So have a better national champion every single year.
I think 64 is the best. I mean, I think you go back to 64. I'd be okay with going back to 64.
But 64 is gimmicky. I mean, if you were an alien who came to this planet and said, what is this? Why do these teams play for 5 months if they're going to have a 68 team tournament? What the heck is going on? I mean, I know there's craziness and excitement, all that in the NCAA tournament, but it just doesn't make any sense if you're a really good team, and it makes sense that nobody would watch the sport for 5 months because the first 5 months doesn't mean anything. So to me, shorten up the NCAA tournament. I know everybody would hate it. No March Madness, yada, yada, yada. I don't care. Give me the best basketball at the end. College football, nobody seems to care that only the top 4 teams are in the playoff. Everybody seems to kind of like it because the really good teams are playing each other.
Yeah, I don't know. The tournament's a beautiful thing. Tournament's a beautiful thing, Jesse.
Why is it beautiful? Why?
It's just It's so much fun, you know. So you want to take out the Valpos and the Bryce Drews and the the Davidsons and Steph Curry run. I mean, you'd be eliminating those things.
Yeah, I don't care.
You don't care. I'm good with the 64. I just think it's people are either going to like college basketball or they're going to not. Like, I don't think you can necessarily draw in the casual sports fan by making any drastic changes. Like, you either like college basketball or you don't. And trying to go out and grab the casual sports fan, I just don't. I don't think there's any way to really do that. So
I
I don't know. I just think you're going to have the base you have, and the more schools that are good in college basketball, the better, because people obviously are going to be interested if their school's good.
I think that's a defeatist attitude, CJ, and nobody does not talk about college football because they're not in the national championship hunt. You know what I mean? You can still have a good season. You can still be great. You can still have the regular season mean something and get yourself into the top 4 or whatever, or have a surprise season. But if you're a top 25 team, it doesn't mean you don't care about your team because you're not able to be in the postseason tournament at the end. It just means that you had a good season and everybody's happy with the good season you had. But it's just a warped sense of view because everybody talks about March Madness and says it's great and believes the upsets are great. But I'm telling you, it's making the first 5 months.
I like, for me, like a college basketball guy that loves college basketball. The tournament does get better the deeper it goes. Usually,
yes.
For me. Like the first weekend, the upsets are fun, but I like when it gets to be. So I'm with you there. Then maybe but if we do that, then you have to make another division. Like you have to have a Division 1 and a Division 1A or whatever. You can't have 3. And to be honest with you, 350 some teams is too many. Like let's go down to 100 Division 1 teams and let's make it 16 make the tournament.
Okay.
Something like that.
I'm with you. Let's do it.
All right, I'm good. I'm good with that.
Boom! It's done.
Change my opinion, I guess. Yeah, because 300. What is it right now? 351. It was last year. Like that's too many. I'll just look at let's look at the bottom of KenPom. Alabama A&M, Presbyterian, North Carolina A&T, Arkansas Pine Bluff. Yeah, I'm okay getting rid of all those teams and put them in another division. Like it's kind of stupid in a way when you think about it, because like, what's the point of having those teams be in the same division as a Kansas? Like those teams should have their own national championship. So, yeah, let's have more divisions.
And they do in college football.
They do in college football. So I'd be good with going to like 100 teams. College football is 121 or something like that.
Yeah, 128-ish, somewhere in that range. But so who do I need to write to? Do I contact Judge Judy or who's next?
I guess we just contact the NCAA and tell them we're here to fix things.
Okay, well that's it. I've solved all the problems.
Write a nice letter. Write a nice letter.
That's how all good things start. Is just writing nice letters to people. Dear Mr. Emmer, yeah.
This is our summer project.
Okay, well, we'll work on it. And I will also let you go just because I know that I'm looking at my watch and nap time could be done anytime.
I might hear a screaming child, but my wife's home now. So.
Yeah, don't ignore a screaming child. And we can't get that blamed on me, especially with people listening here to the podcast. Well, yeah. CJ, I appreciate you taking the time. And for CJ, this is Jesse. We're going to sign off for the Sports Beat KC podcast. Be sure to tune in for another episode next week.